Hello and welcome to Everyday Oral Surgery. This is your host, Dr. Grant Stucki. I am an oral and maxillofacial surgeon practicing in Denver, Colorado. The goal of this podcast is to connect, learn, and inspire. In this podcast, you'll be hearing from OMS surgeons all over the globe discussing ways to improve the practice of oral and maxillofacial surgery. Most information shared in this podcast will be based on personal experience and opinions, so please supplement what you learn here with approved research studies. Without further ado, please enjoy today's episode. Welcome everyone back to another episode. Today I'm with Dr. Roger Levin, CEO of Levin Group. Roger, thank you for joining us for another topic.
I'm thrilled to be here with you, Grant. This is going to be really interesting for your listeners today, I hope.
Yes, I'm excited too. So we kind of wanted to do a little mini series here on the office manager and how to recruit, train, everything that goes into creating a great office manager. So where would you start us off on this topic?
Well, I think I'd start off about 5 years ago, quickly, which is I tried at times to step outside of my mental framework of dentistry and the work that we do and look as an observer and say, what could be better about dentistry? What could be better about oral surgery? What could be better about practices? And it came to me about 5 years ago that the one area that is so critical, but a great opportunity that has almost no one addressing it is the office manager. And about 2 years ago, we started doing all of our research at Levin Group to put together our new office manager practice mastery program, because there's almost no training out there for office managers. So as the research came to fruition and we launched the program, I start writing and speaking, and I'm thrilled to do this podcast with you, and I'll do everything I can to help the listeners. So the real beginning is to understand the reality of office managers. In the 1980s, there were a couple of national speakers, very good speakers, who were creating new names for staff members. We got the word receptionist became a bad word. It became, front desk coordinator. And office manager was a term that suddenly was given basically to a lot of front desk people, very nice people, hardworking people, but they didn't necessarily have any skills as managers. Well, in our research in recent years, we found that 96% of dental office managers do not have any formal management education or background. And in most cases, this is the first management position. They didn't have management experience. But management over the last 100 years, and it's literally about 100 years since the first management consulting firm was started in the United States, management's become a science. And the greatest freedom for an oral surgeon to be able to get back to just doing surgery, not worry about what's happening in the practice, not be asked a bunch of questions, just treat patients, enjoy patients, is to have a great office manager. Because there are only three things an oral surgeon should be doing: clinical excellence, patient relations, and referring doctor relations. Everything else can be done by a great office manager. And of course, production and practice income will skyrocket when this happens. And so will the amount of enjoyment of practicing.
Yes, it sounds like a dream come true to have a person who can help you do all of that.
Well, it is, but let's look at the landscape of dentistry. First of all, practice operations are more complex than ever before. As you and I have talked about, I was in practice in the 1980s and early 90s while I was growing the company, the consulting firm. And, we had so many fewer materials, choices, options, less technology, insurance, which I never really had to participate, but was just straightforward. It was not a difficult, complex business. Well, dentistry's gotten more complicated. And yet the surgeon still has to do just as much clinical production while they're trying to run this business. The second factor is, starting in 2022, even if revenue is going up, we're seeing a number of new client OMS practices with production up and profit down, which means income's down. And the reason is that overhead jumped in 2022 by almost 11%. First time we've ever seen that in history. Now it's back down to, 3, 4, 5%. today, but still it's growing sometimes faster than the increase in production. So office managers become so critical for that. And the last piece might be the most serious from a psychological stress standpoint is managing the team. We are dealing with new types of team members. We have a shortage of dental team. We're paying a much higher compensation for them. And team members have real issues also: illness, caring for family members, single parents, old cars that break down, all kinds of situations. And you really want an office manager to take all that off the surgeon's back. No surgeon ever interviewed for a residency and when asked the question, why do you want to be an oral surgeon, said, I love dealing with staff problems. So this is the rationale for why I believe and want to build great office managers, because the time and effort to do that will pay off just wonderfully in so many ways for the practice.
Yeah, and you're bringing up because I think if you ask most surgeons, well, what is the job description of an office manager? I think most would focus on that. Like, well, at least just putting out the fires of the other employees, and that's the biggest thing. Just because I don't want to hear any more crying and whining and all these problems. But
Yeah.
I guess, and I think there's probably more to it than just handling problems. If not, there'd probably no one would want that job. But what else goes into the whole job description?
Yeah, so here's what I need everybody to do. I'm going to give you the job description really easily. Don't look up dental office manager or OMS office manager. Whatever you get on the internet will be garbage. Look up chief operating officer. This is a job that has been around for a long time in the business world. The CEOs do not run these big companies. The COO, the chief operating officer, is the person that runs the company. And it is not about putting out fires. It is about creating systems to avoid fires. It is about creating and models that allow the practice to grow, develop strategy, find ways to improve. And yes, they certainly will put out fires, but a chief operating officer does three basic things. They put systems in the practice to operate day to day for everyone to follow. They create checklists for the team so that every day, every week, every month, team members know exactly what they're to do, when they're to do it, how they're to do it, and how to measure themselves. And they measure those team members. And third, they know the key numbers. Oral surgeons don't need to be sitting around after work studying numbers. And by the way, as you know, Grant, most don't do it. They know they should, if you don't have a great office manager, they think they should do it, but they still don't do it. The office manager, as a chief operating officer, knows the numbers. They're the buffer between the oral surgeon and the team. We have a surgical group we work with. We have a lot of oral surgery clients. This is a very fine group. And they're in about their fifth year with us, which is a pretty long time. But having gotten them to that level that I'm talking about, when they get a report from the office manager every month on practice performance and financials, the only report they get is called the exception report. What's not working? Where are we behind goal? They don't get all kinds of numbers to look at and P&Ls and all these things that, you know, you can look at them and they make sense. But they run so well now, they only want to know what's not working properly and what we're going to do about it. And their office manager has been trained. She is exceptional. And she will say, you're down in this area, or we're down in this area. Here's my recommendation of what we should do. So that's an advanced version of a great office manager. But this is a woman who literally runs this practice day to day. And the staff know if they've got a question, they go to her. A non-clinical question. They don't go to the surgeons and bother them asking, can I put in an emergency, or Dr. So-and-so's on the phone. She's just as comfortable talking to their referring doctors as they are. Again, not in a clinical sense, but about everything else. So the key is, if you want a job description, just go into ChatGPT or Perplexity or now Gemini and just put in, show me a job description of a chief operating officer, and you'll get a pretty excellent job description from that. It's that simple, and that's what we need to build, because when you have that person, Grant, you do get that hard to believe fantasy person running your office.
Yeah, and I love how that kind of reframes it, that phrase of like creating systems to avoid fires and problems and make things smooth as opposed to you're just carrying a fire extinguisher around, and every day you show up looking for a fire, and it's just one off here and there.
Well, what I can say to the surgeons is when you have a great office manager, you will no longer have any fires. Your office manager will, but you won't. And one of the things we tell office managers is don't even bother the doctors with this information. Here's an example. In the last couple of weeks, one of our consultants told me about a front desk person that announced to her surgeon that she was going to take a 4-week trip to France and she was leaving the following, I think it was like a Wednesday or Thursday. She was leaving the following Monday. Somebody had invited her and she was about to take a 4-week trip to France. Office manager met with the person, explained the situation, explained the consequences, dealt with it. And the surgeon only found out about it from an assistant who mentioned it after the fact, who had heard about it from the staff member. Now, this is a 12-person office, by the way, 12 or 14 staff members, I don't remember, but it was not 25 or 30. But even in small offices, we get conflicts, we get rumors, we get problems, but surgeons shouldn't be dealing with that. And just imagine a whole year, Grant, where you don't hear about one staff problem. Wouldn't that be great?
Oh yes, so nice.
But I like that. I'm going to go to France for 4 weeks. I'm leaving Monday. Well, actually, you may go, but you can leave Monday, but don't come back in 4 weeks. It worked out where she ended up postponing the trip, so, or whatever she did. But the office manager handled it. Not imagine the stress if somebody told you that on a Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock, and you got patients booked all day, and you got to deal with this. And that's
Yeah.
that's just one of those silly examples. But this goes on all the time. More importantly, though, is building the team to be great. An office manager has the time, they've got the freedom to really manage. Surgeons don't. Surgeons are fitting it in. They're either ignoring it, they're doing it last minute, they're waiting till you may have done this. Still, you let it go, and then you blow up because you're so angry. It's much better to have somebody literally managing team members day to day. We have a section called progressive discipline that it has to be done sometimes where you have to meet with a team member and help them understand what's acceptable and what's not, because not everybody knows. But the
Mhm.
most important part is the positive aspect. We want to build great team members to do a great job, to let the practice grow and let the surgeon be a surgeon. And that's where your office manager comes in.
So very much focused on systems, checklists, things that can
Yep.
reviewing numbers to figure out where maybe systems are breaking down and then making better systems. Is that kind of the right idea, or what do you think?
Oh, it is. Right. Absolutely. Great office managers operate by checklist. They know what numbers to look at daily, weekly, monthly. Surgeons go home. Office managers are studying the practice performance. What we call the strategic office managers, even looking at strategies to improve the practice overall. We have, I'm thinking of one office, the office manager goes out, several hours a week, just visiting, referring doctor practices to say hello, see how their customer service is coming across, get to know people. And it's been phenomenal for the referral process as well. But I do have a list today for our first session of a number of the job description items of an office manager, and I'll be happy to go through that with you, where people can, it's hard for a lot of surgeons to understand right away. Well, I've got an office manager. What should this person really be doing? Or a
Yeah.
lot of people think, well, I've got a great office manager. Unfortunately, you don't know great until you see great.
Yeah.
And, there aren't that many great office managers, but I hope to contribute to building lots of them in the next 10 years. That would be just fantastic.
Yeah.
So, if you want to know more after you ask me any questions, I'll be happy to go through that.
Well, yeah, and I think that that's a good because I'm excited to hear your list, but like I think a lot of doctors, surgeons are not sure entirely. They kind of know the main one or two things they want the office manager to do. They don't want to overwhelm them. They don't
Right.
want to give them too much stuff, not enough stuff. So where do you find this happy medium, and what's on your list, I guess, is the next question.
Yeah, and part of it also is you're going to lose your office manager at some point. So if you have a good office manager, do you lose everything? Not if systems are in place. The next office manager comes in, they see the systems that are there, they can work to improve them. But it's a great this is one of the best opportunities in the profession today. So the first step is the word workflow. Every surgeon knows the word workflow, but they think clinically, they think digitally. But there is a business side workflow that needs to be in place in the practice. So number one is practice operations and workflow. The office manager oversees the front desk, which includes scheduling, billing, insurance, processing, patient flow, new patient onboarding, and managing referring doctor practices from the administration relationship standpoint. And that takes about a year to get fully in place. Kind of what you want to do is train your office manager while he or she is working on the systems in the practice at the same time. So it's not just academic, it's a real life experience. Yeah. Number two is standardizing check-in procedures. How often do we meet with team members? Do team members have measurements? Did A, B, and C get done this day, this week? If not, why not? And constantly rebalancing what the team does to get the very best possible results for the practice. Surgeons cannot do this. They don't have time. They don't have consistency. We really want surgeons productively engaged with patients. So those two alone will revolutionize almost any practice at a higher level. And one reason this is so important, I just got invited by an OMS group in Southern California to speak to them in March. And it's two different topics they've asked me to present. And one is, how do we compete in the era of the DSO? And that's a great topic because competition is rising. We need to be sharper than ever before, which means the office manager can play a key role in making this practice efficient, smooth running, and effective. So this is not just a luxury. I really think it's an essential, or I wouldn't have jumped into it with so much research.
Nice. So workflow and standardizing check-in procedures is kind of the top two ones to go.
Well, they may be one and two, but these are not in order.
Oh, okay.
Because number three is pretty important, finance and growth. We are hyper-focused on practice income. We have shifted, and this is theoretically interesting. We still want to increase production for every client. That's our mantra here. But we also want to now make sure we're including practice income. And the reason is that for many, many years, we've increased practice production and doctors always had more take-home income. But in the last few years, as I explained, there are some new challenges. So we have shifted to making sure that we are growing practice income. Well, to a large degree, that is the job of the office manager. Again, surgeons should be productively engaged. There should be a well-designed schedule. There should be goals around that schedule. But at the same time, it's the office manager's job to achieve those goals. Surgeons should be able to walk in the morning, be told what to do, where to go, do what they do all day long, and go home. And if they follow the protocols, then the financial side will be excellent. But you also need then, to develop profit and loss statements, to look at overhead. We encourage most clients to reduce their overhead by anywhere from 3 to 5%. 4% is about average. You can only lower overhead by so much. So once you lower overhead, then it's about growth. And then the other thing that's going to sound funny to a lot of surgeons, but it's working, is office managers that also focus on revenue opportunities. How do we drive more revenue through the practice? And the office manager is the one that sees what's happening day to day. Who's referring patients that don't accept treatment? Whose practice sends patients that no-show more frequently? Which patients are turning down larger implant cases? We had a discussion recently of one of our clients who was doing well with the single tooth implants, but as the cases got bigger, they were well below average. Because what they weren't doing, they had a prejudice or bias against patient financing because they didn't want to give up that little bit extra of their fee. When we explained to them that you're giving up 6% of your fee, but when you don't do it, you're losing 100% of your fee. They agreed to put it in place. It became a standard part of the treatment coordinator implant presentation process, and they grew by hundreds of thousands of dollars by
Mm.
bringing in patient financing. They just weren't, they were thinking, well, I'll lose 6% instead of thinking I'll lose 100%. It was the office manager that started tracking it and tracking case results and case acceptance and realized that the TC wasn't even offering financing because the doctors had a bias against it. So today they're losing 6% on a lot of cases, but they're picking up 34% that they didn't, or even 44% that they wouldn't have had before in sheer profit or practice income. So this is where office managers can, when they really become great, and we're teaching them how to think strategically, they can find these day-to-day opportunities that are enormous and benefit the OMS practice.
Okay, so the office manager is kind of looking at the flow of money into and out of the practice and where
Yep.
things can be tweaked to increase the
Yeah.
net over or the net income. Yeah.
And the next big one, and we could argue which is more important, finance or dealing with the team, but there's no argument which is more of a headache at times. The oral surgeon, it needs to be a great leader. The oral surgeon needs to create the culture, the vision, the mission, and then the office manager needs to drive that every day and carry it out and make it real. But at the same time, the office manager, a great office manager, manages the entire team. And when I say that, the ones we're building will do the recruiting, the interviewing, even the hiring. Some doctors don't want people hired that they haven't met. Some are more than happy to have new people brought in by a great office manager. So there is the, recruiting, interviewing, hiring, onboarding phase, and then there's a whole second aspect to the team development. And great office managers build great teams. And surgeons really can't do it because even though they can be great leaders, they don't have time day to day to understand what's going on. What are the motivating factors? What are the conflicts that we're having? What's hard for the team? But the office managers can, and that's the difference.
Mm.
Dentists and surgeons, we go to work every day and have no time to manage. Managers go to work every day and have lots of time to manage. That's their job. So we want office managers that can build great teams. It eliminates a lot of fires. It eliminates a lot of conflict. And they learn how to balance, being straightforward with what's acceptable and what's not, with developing people. What's the next skill set this person needs? Why isn't this working? Who's falling off? Who's getting better? So that's another major part of the office manager job description. And that's a big part. That might be 25 to 30% of the job all by itself, managing the team.
Yeah.
The mistake a lot of office managers make is they will step in and do things that the team did wrong. They'll micromanage. A lot of office managers are doing staff level functions rather than making sure the team learns to work independently. We know office managers that come to work, the team does what they do all day long, they do it beautifully, and the office manager focuses on how the practice is running, how to improve it. So all of a sudden you have a colleague instead of just another team member. And that's a fantastic thing.
Okay, so managing the team, recruiting, developing the team, retaining them. I mean, I like that you said there's some responsibility there, with the surgeon to create the culture and be a great leader.
Yeah.
But they're working hand in hand with the manager to do that and create a great place for people who want to stay the long term.
Yeah, using an example or analogy, I think I've done it here at my company, Levin Group. We started with one person, me. Now we have consultants throughout the United States and Europe. We were remote before COVID, so we knew how to manage. There's a lot of literature now. How do you manage remotely in businesses that have that? We were pretty good at it from early on because I studied it. But I have an executive team. And now our rookie is 20 years. So, these are people, I'm very lucky. They have a lot of experience, but they took the culture that that I set down, and over the years, they embodied it, they embraced it, and they drive it. So if we look at, for example, our vice president of consulting, she spends a lot of time reinforcing to these consultants that work, throughout the US and Europe. She spends a lot of time reminding them of our culture. It's called Purple Label. We don't have to deal with it, but our Purple Label culture means that we have a fanatical approach to customer service in a sense for our clients, but also for our employees. In other words, I have a fanatical sense of doing a great job every day to help every consultant. Today, we had a consultant that ran into a very unique situation. She called me, and I was on the phone for 20 minutes, discussing it with her. As experienced as she is, this was a unique situation. So we were brainstorming our way through it. And that's the culture. But our executives drive the culture. Well, in a practice, the surgeon, yeah, the surgeon or surgeons, because we deal with a lot of groups also, sets the culture or the mission and the vision. And these things have to be real. These are words that get thrown out a lot, but it's the office manager that drives it day to day and helps the team members really become part of the culture and the vision and the mission. And my only caveat there is keep those things short. If you have a mission statement that's long, nobody remembers it, nobody's thinking about
Yeah.
it. I think in general today, everything should be short, whether you're writing, speaking, whatever.
Yeah.
People want short today. So, but it's the office manager that makes it real, and that's so important. While surgeons, again, are, involved with patients and referring doctors.
Yeah. I mean, should the office manager have any type of role to or a system in place to help the surgeon if there's certain things the surgeon needs to improve from a leadership standpoint? Or is that, what relationship is there with an office manager?
Grant, I always tell you, and I'm not kidding, how smart you are because that's on the list. I mean, yeah, that's a great insight right there because on the list is that the office manager has to manage up and manage down. What makes this
Okay.
a hard job even with education, which we really don't have for dentistry for office managers. But if we did, or we sent our office managers even to Harvard Business School, and then they still have to come back and figure out how do I apply it in oral surgery practice. What makes this job really hard is they've got to manage up and down. So they have to manage the team. We've talked about that a lot today. But they also have to manage the doctors. So they're really sandwiched. And a good office manager is brilliant at managing the surgeons, not manipulating, but letting them know when, for example, one thing we run into periodically, surgeons run late. You may not know that, but
Of
they run they run
course.
late. And some of it's legitimate and some of it's because I'm an emergency-based practice. I'm a surgeon. I get to run late and nobody should question that. Well, we do sometimes because some of it is just not paying attention. So if we have patients, that are waiting and getting unhappy and disgruntled because you're running, 15, 20, 25 minutes late, yeah, that the office manager doesn't get to decide, but they bring it to the attention of the surgeon. If the surgeon is behaving a certain way with a team member, maybe a little caustic or a little short tempered with a team member, the office manager is the one who interfaces because team members are told if you've got a problem, bring it to the office manager, not the surgeon. And that's really important, especially in a group practice where team members are brilliant at what I call playing their favorite surgeon. Different surgeons have different team members they like better. We have endless stories. I mean, this has happened so often. A new policy gets set down, and the assistant goes to their favorite surgeon, and the surgeon goes, "Oh, don't worry about it. You don't have to do that." I mean, that's the fastest way to undermine it. You'll just kill the policy right there. Instead, it's the office manager who also works on the surgeon. So in our new program, we're teaching them how to manage the team in great comprehensive depth, but we're also teaching them how to manage the doctors. And that's just as important because we doctors at times slip as well, or have not
Mhm.
developed our own emotional intelligence or interpersonal skills or customer service at the level that we should. And
For
that
sure.
brings me, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because those are the people I always try to surround myself with are assistants and managers who, are aware of the ways I could improve as well and aren't afraid to say, hey, I'm seeing something that maybe you could work on. And of course, you have to be delicate. Most surgeons have a very fragile ego, but it's invaluable to have someone who can see things and isn't afraid to speak up and say, this could help if you were to do X, Y, and Z or change the way you're
Yeah.
talking to people. I don't know.
Well, I would say to surgeons, Clinically, an office manager should not be telling you what to do. They have no
Yeah.
idea what's going on there. But I would say to surgeons, if you really want to grow as a surgeon and a person, one of your goals for next year should be to get consistent, occasional feedback from your office manager on how you're doing. Years ago, before we moved into training office managers at this mastery level, doctors were doing performance reviews. And I don't know if you and I've ever talked about this. One of my favorite articles I wrote was called "Why Your Team Hates Performance Reviews," and they do. They hate them. They may pretend it's okay. Most of them are sitting there like, "How fast can we get this over, and how much more are you going to pay me?" That's all they want to know.
Yep.
Because most of the reviews are some of them they're ridiculous. If you go to, Office Depot and you buy the pad with the 10 checklist of, was someone punctual, how do they dress? That's completely unproductive. That's the office manager's job anyway, and you don't wait till a review. But we used to encourage surgeons and dentists, when you sat down with a team member, one of your questions should be, how can I do my job better? And to ask the team. Don't be afraid to get feedback from your office manager on how you're doing, because they're getting feedback from the team. They're not just making it up out of left field, they're hearing from the team. And if you want to grow, you got to have people giving you feedback. Just like when you get a fitness trainer, their job's to tell you you're not working out properly, or your form isn't good, or what you're doing is going to hurt you. Your office manager is a little bit of your coach as a doctor outside of the clinical realm. So
Hmm.
embrace that rather than being, a paranoid about what they might say and getting offended. I love to hear what I can do better because I might not notice it. And if I don't hear about it, I'm not going to get better. And I encourage everyone to reach their potential.
And I feel like there's many ways to ask that question, such as what are the things I do that helps lift the team up from a, morale
Mhm.
standpoint? What are the
Yeah.
things, so you can ask it in ways that maybe aren't so painful, but that, are helpful. And there's many ways to attack that question.
Absolutely. And again, the surgeon should be inspiring the team, complimenting the team, recognizing the team. Nothing is more powerful than when the doctor takes time to recognize a team member, as office managers also should be doing. But the office manager then deals with, the nitty gritty. Surgeons should not. So the other thing the office manager does, and you and I've done a podcast on this, and you know that I'm a fanatic about it, is customer service. Great systems. Let's go all the way back to the beginning of our podcast today. Great systems allow for great customer service. You will never have great customer service if you have bad systems, and you will only have mediocre customer service with mediocre systems. But when an office manager masters the job and puts in the systems and checklists and operations, that office manager can then begin to implement incredible customer service strategies. And we always fall off. As soon as they go in place, the degradation phase begins. But the office manager is the one who's there day to day, pulling it back to excellent customer service. So that's really important. I just wrote an article based on a true story that I've heard many times. An oral surgeon called me. I love to talk about what just happened because it's real when I get a call. And he said, I think we need your referral marketing program. I just lost my top referral source. Now, words like that always get my radar up, because the only way to know you lost your top referral source just now, Grant, is if your top referral source calls you and says, I'm never referring you another patient. And general dentists don't typically do that.
Yeah.
So we went back and looked at the data, and he started losing referrals from this top A about a year ago. And at 6 months ago, the guy was way down, and then it dropped down to nothing. And the office manager would have picked that up. He did not look at his reports. His practice was still doing well. And it got masked by other referrals. And you might say, well, who needs that A? Well, you need that A because those other referrals come and go. And the office manager was not a trained office manager, didn't pick it up either, didn't look at reports. So one of the biggest jobs of the office manager is also to study the referral pattern of the referring doctors. But back to customer service, when this surgeon met with the referring doctor and we gave this surgeon the scripts and how to do it, and as you said, take your ego off the table. You know something's very wrong when referrals dry up. It was that the front desk person in the practice had been called by the front desk person in the referring office with an emergency. And there's nothing unpleasant, but she said, we are so busy, we can't get your patient in for 3 days, and we only have a 4:30 in the afternoon. Well, the front desk person, people are people, they have bad days, got so angry about this and started working the GP, the referring doctor, and just went on and on and on. And the referring doctor finally said, okay, I don't want her quitting. So I'm going to start looking at referring a little bit elsewhere. And then
Yeah.
as patients came up to the front desk, she was switching them from where they were referred by the general dentist to where she wanted them to go. And the general
Hmm.
dentist didn't know that either. So it's a whole conflagration of all kinds of parts there. Bottom line is nobody noticed until referrals almost completely dried up. This is where a great office manager could pick it up early and then send the surgeon to meet with the referring doctor to try to clear up the problem.
Okay, so the office manager is creating systems to improve customer service. They have some way to look at the metrics and review that on a monthly or whatever type of basis,
Yeah.
to catch things. Is that right?
Yeah, because referrals are the lifeblood of a specialty practice. So if it's that important, then the office manager, it should be one of the highest priorities in terms of monthly reviews. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And also, the front desk person should never say to a top A or high A referring doctor, we can't get your patient in. That just
Yeah,
doesn't happen.
exactly.
So the staff person then was counseled by remember, this was not an office manager, was highly trained, so she had never really taught this to the front desk staff the way it has been taught now. So yeah.
Nice.
So
Do you have, are those all the points, or are there more to go?
well, the last one, and I'll make this quick, is we deal with so much regulation today and compliance. This is now the job of the office manager. What are the HR regulations, human resources? What are the compliance regulations? What reports have to be generated? You've got to make the office manager make sure all regulatory activities take place properly. And that'll be something we'll discuss more from a human resources standpoint in one of these upcoming podcasts. But you can't just manage people, you also have to manage regulation today, which is bigger than ever before.
Okay, so there's a lot of hats that the office manager has to wear here. I mean, I'm assuming we'll get into this further, but I'm assuming they can get a team around them that can help them really do all of these things. But these are kind of, you're saying the bird's
Yeah,
eye view, the overall kind of seven or so main things they got to focus on.
right. That's our next podcast, which is building the team from an office manager standpoint, not from a surgeon doing it standpoint.
Got it.
Again, we want to maximize surgeon clinical time, patient relations, and relationship building. And these are the surgeons that are going to have the top producing practices and best practice income.
Well, this is really helpful because I think this opens our eyes to the role of a manager, gives us some clarity on what they're supposed to be doing. I think this is also positive for an office manager or the COO to hear because it's not so depressing. It's something that is doable and
Right.
uplifts the practice, and it's not just putting out fires.
Yeah, the only caveat, and I am incredibly positive about how great this is going to be. The only caveat, I want to make sure everybody hears this, don't walk in Monday. And I'll tell you a story in a minute about this. Don't walk in Monday and say, okay, you've been the office manager. Nobody should ever talk to me anymore, approach me, come near me. You run everything, and they don't know what to do. So years
Yeah.
ago, having nothing to do with our new research on office managers, I was giving a lecture. I may have said this in one of the podcasts with you. I don't remember. On something called the level 4 doctor. And level 4 is exactly what I described. Come to work, go to the morning meeting, do the surgery, and go home. And it really can happen. And I gave this lecture and I got an email from an office manager. Goes back a few years, who said, Dr. Levin, we need your help. Our surgeon just came in today and said he's a level 4 doctor and no one except the assistants are to speak to him during the workday. I'm like, I think he missed a few steps in the set. He must have been out, doing some on the phone at some part of the seminar. He missed a few steps there. You have to build this, and give your office manager the best chance of being great then all of this can happen. But don't ask them to do what they can't do yet, or you'll have breakdown in the office.
That's a good point. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of back and forth and help that the doctor does to get the manager to a point where things are running this smoothly.
Absolutely. Well, Grant, thank you. I'm so
Thank
excited
you.
to talk about this. It should be very positive for everybody because it's the word freedom that I'm using when I explain this. Dentists, surgeons need freedom to go
Yes.
back to being surgeons and not spending as much time on things that have nothing to do with advancing the practice.
Oh yeah, we love freedom. We love systems that run smoothly. All this is just awesome, and I think the office manager is kind of at the core of a smoothly running practice. So I'm excited for our next few episodes.
Great. I look forward to it, and thank you again.
All right, have a good rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Everyday Oral Surgery. For more information on these podcasts, please visit everydayoralsurgery.com. I love feedback and would be very grateful if you would reach out to me via my email, grantstucki@gmail.com, and let me know what you thought of this episode. Or you can text me at 720-441-6059. Additionally, if you have any topics you'd like to hear about, or if you would like to be a guest on the podcast, please email or text me. I found many of my interviewees through people who have been contacting me and have been listening, and I've gotten so many great ideas for more podcasts, and that's what helps keep the podcast rolling. So I really appreciate you making that extra effort and helping me out with feedback and knowing what to do next on the podcast. Thank you so much.